Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Duke, and this is The Takeaway, our weekly segment with the prolific Alex Newman. Alex, thanks for being with us again today. It's good to see you.
Great to be with you, and great to see you as well. Thanks, Duke.
We've got a couple of wonderful articles that you wrote for us this week, and we want to talk about them. And the first comes from Washington State, a hotbed of leftist lunacy, where now you have what you and I have been predicting for years, this in loco parentis attitude of the schools, the idea that the schools and school officials, teachers, and now are the primary parents of your kids, not you. And we're getting more and more confirmation from this in Washington State as Thompson Elementary School principal. Tell us what he did just this past week.
Well, it's just incredible. He wanted to organize a parent teacher night, and a whole bunch of parents didn't show up. Apparently a lot of them had work and couldn't get out of it and had commitments or whatever. And so he got all riled up and angry and sent off a note saying that if the parents didn't send in a note and or come to the next meeting, which he rescheduled it because not enough parents came, then he was going to punish the children. He was going to give them double detention, so for lunch and I guess after school. And so obviously the parents were pretty upset, but you're right. It reflects this kind of attitude that, the schools are agents now of the federal government, and as agents of the federal government, they will command parents and families in terms of what to do. And they even call themselves a team with the family, right, in the raising of the children. And I think it's very indicative of the attitude that is increasingly prevalent in the leadership of the public school system.
Yeah, it's pretty silly. The idea that a principal can throw a tantrum because parents aren't participating, when in reality, everything that's been done in our public government schools for the last 10 years has been designed to cut the parents out. And then when the parents don't participate because, they've been told, we don't care about your concerns about the classroom, we don't care about your concerns about the testing, we don't care about teaching what your opinion is of us teaching transgenderism to your middle school kids, we don't care about that. But we do care that you don't come to our mandatory parent-teacher meetings where we tell you how we're going to keep doing these things to your kids. That blows me away. And there's no sense of irony in these schools, right? This idea that they're not teaming up with parents. They are bossing parents around like they were little school kids.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And in fact, I've been on this for years now. They're trying, the federal government is deliberately trying, and you can read the legislation that they pass. Look at the ESSA. They have these provisions for full service community schools, and they're going to worry about your kids' mental health, dental health, physical health, nutrition, psychological makeup. Now they're asking them, questions about, the sexual habits and the home life and all this. So really, I suggest that these schools are kind of becoming parental replacement centers, right? They want to sideline the parents, and yet they also want to boss the parents around. You come into our mandatory meeting, or we're going to punish your children. And, I think it's a troubling omen of things to come if people don't start speaking up and pushing back against this.
Let me turn my sarcasm font on for a second, Alex. Is it possible that we're seeing a biblical revival in Washington schools? I mean, doesn't the Bible suggest that the sins of the fathers are visited upon the children? I mean, is there hope that this is a biblical move on the part of this Washington principal?
Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure that that's not the case. As they've tried to ban the Bible from schools. No teachers should be mentioning those things. They even get their panties in a bunch if someone mentions, that our rights come from our Creator, as the founder said was a self-evident truth. And so, unfortunately, I don't think that's what's happening. I think they're kind of ripping off the mask at this point. They're going to boss the parents around. They're going to brainwash the children. If the parents complain about the brainwashing of the children, then they're going to have problems. And, this goes nowhere good from here if people don't start waking up.
Well, I also have to call you out while the sarcasm font is still on. If you're going to mention panties in a bunch, we have to include boxer briefs. And what about our listeners who are going commando right now? I mean, we've got to make sure we're teaching inclusive excellence, right, in these government schools. And speaking of the Bible, the second story you wrote is fantastic, too. It's something that I knew was, as a university professor, I've seen this coming for a long time. A lot of colleges and universities are already doing this. In the United Kingdom, in England and Britain, in the UK, they've decided to replace the words BC and AD in all historical references, before Christ and Anno Domini, the year of our Lord. They've decided now that those are too Christian, They're too offensive to non-Christians or Jewish people. And so what they're going to do is they're going to, particularly if it offends Muslims, right? So what they're going to do is they're going to replace AD and BC with BCE, which stands for, instead of before Christ, before the Common Era, and AD for them, BCE, before the Common Era, and Common Era, CE. Is what it is, right? So BC now becomes before the Common Era, and AD now becomes Common Era. And of course, the irony about this, I love in your article, the irony is that religious groups, Christian, Muslim, and Jewish groups in the United Kingdom are confused and can't understand why the government's doing this, because they're not the least bit bothered by it. The British government wants you to believe, right, that this is somehow done because we want to protect sensibilities, but there are no sensibilities that are offended.
That's right. They actually interviewed some Muslim leaders and some Jewish leaders, and they said, "Hey, we're not offended by that." You know what? It's great. And Britain is technically still a Christian country. The monarch of England is actually the supreme governor of the Church of England, and the Church of England is the established church over there. And so, at least on paper, they're supposed to be a Christian country. And now, they've had this massive influx of Islamic immigration. Of course, all of it engineered to the point now where ethnic Brits are actually a minority in their own capital city, right? They've now elected a Muslim mayor, Mayor Khan, I think his name is. And so this trend is accelerating. And I think it's really troubling. It actually reminds me of the French Revolution. They decided that the 7-day week was not good because God had made the world in 6 days and then rested on the seventh. So we're going to make a 10-day week. And we all know how that ended up. Lots of beheading and an orgy of disgusting violence and parading prostitutes through the streets as a goddess of liberty. And once society starts becoming unmoored from its Judeo-Christian foundations, from a biblical worldview, we see human societies, human civilizations all over the world. Take a look, do a brief review of world history, world civilizations, and see which one would you prefer to live in. Would you like to live in the Aztec civilization, where they'll chop out the hearts of children to sacrifice to the gods, or maybe the Vikings in Scandinavia, where they'll sacrifice children in the middle of the street to please their demon gods? I mean, which one of those societies do you want to live in? Because once we leave the Judeo-Christian foundations, it's going to go to places where I think people don't even imagine right now.
Yeah, and that is what's really tragic about this. It's the ahistoricity about this. The anger, the war on the left, the progressive left all over the Western world on accurate history. An accurate history accounts for America, Western world sins. We spend plenty of time talking about slavery, oppression, tyranny in Western culture, but we do not talk about it elsewhere. In fact, we go out of our way to pretend that non-Western cultures are somehow better or more enlightened or more gentle than we are, and it's a lie. And what happens when you get rid of the Christianity, and something as simple as BC and AD, these basic markers of our cultural history and heritage, just getting rid of them and purging Western culture of any references to its origins, you are not helping immigrants. You are not helping the causes of freedom and liberty. You are not ultimately advancing the cause of progressivism. You are sowing the seeds of its own destruction, because you have no reference now to go back to our hard-won liberties and freedoms that emanated out of biblical teaching, that emanated out of the Ten Commandments, the Sermon on the Mount. You have no recourse now, historically, to justify why we shouldn't have an Islamic theocracy if Islam is the majority people in a country. And as you just said, London, the capital city, one of the most important cities in the history of the free world, is now a primarily Islamic city. And they're able to vote in Muslim mayors. Now, again, does this mean overnight London's going to become a Muslim caliphate city? No, but what it means is the impetus of the culture is moving in an Islamic way. And this is not going to be ultimately good for the same Western values that progressives say they have a historical reason to preserve when you've erased that history.
That's exactly right. It's a troubling sign of things to come. I think it's a very worrying trend, and I hope that it'll cause people to wake up and realize what's happening here. I mean, they're wiping away our history. They're changing our vocabulary. They have this, it's always this passionate agenda to drive out Christ and the Bible and all the rest of it from every public place. And yet they'll be, doing yoga and meditation and Hinduism and Islam and reciting the Shahada in the public schools. Anything is fine. Buddhism, atheism, humanism, evolutionism, all of the different religions are fine, except Christianity, really, which was, of course, the foundation of our civilization. It's a very dangerous trend. It's a very sad trend, and unfortunately, I suspect this is going to be spreading all over the Western world in the years to come if we don't push back.
The West is going to find out really quickly that the relative tolerance of Christianity down through the ages won't be fully appreciated until it's finally gone. Alex, thank you so much for another wonderful takeaway, and we look forward to seeing you next week. If you enjoyed this video and all of our videos, please consider a tax-deductible donation so we can keep the whole thing free for you. I'm Dr. Duke. Thanks for watching.